Good morning, everyone. Today we have a very special artist, Chaz Friend, and he is most fantastic because he takes willow and makes these incredible sculptures and baskets and you name it. And when I saw his work and just the scale of it and just the possibilities of willow, that's pretty mind blowing. So I'm just gonna hand it over to Chaz to tell about how he got into it, what's his process, and probably do a little demo so we can all get started. So over to you, Chaz.
Okay, so good morning, folks. So what I'd just like to do this morning is talk a little bit about my journey as an artist, how I got into willow, show you some of the kind of products and things that I do, and talk a little bit about that kind of that struggle of the artist that we have, because I think we're all artists here, aren't we, one sort or another. So my journey as an artist began in secondary school. At that point in the secondary school where you choose your exam subjects. So I went bounding up to my art teacher at the end of a lesson as people were filing out and said, "Oh, I'm going to choose art as one of my subjects." And he turned around straight away and he said, "Well, I wouldn't bother if I were you. Well, I suppose you could do CSEs if you really want." So straight away that was, "Oh, I can't do this. I'm no good. I'm rubbish." Okay, so straight away across, in my head somewhere there was I slammed the door at that point. I'm not artistic. I'm not creative. I can't do that. But I'd enjoyed it. That's why I said, I was going to take this, because I felt something inside. I enjoyed doing it, but it was pretty rubbish, probably. And I didn't get a lot of encouragement from my parents. I think I had colouring in books, but there wasn't much arty stuff in the house. I can never remember my mum sitting down and doing any drawing or painting with me. So I was pretty rubbish at it, and so that was it. So then I became a primary teacher. Spent 24 years in the classroom, and creativity kind of squeezed out in different places. I used to love storytelling. That was my favourite thing about being in school as a teacher, doing the storytelling. And I played guitar and had a little bit of a little bit of songwriting, and I wrote poetry and I wrote stories and things like that. But still, even with all that in my head, I'm not creative. I'm not artistic. And then school was getting, every year is getting tougher and tougher in terms of the amount of time you have. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I was always trying to get absolutely everything done. So I'm married in my second marriage, and my little lad had just started school, and he was really struggling. And Zoe couldn't even sit with him and do the reading, because he couldn't sit still. He couldn't focus. It was really hard. And I was thinking, I'm a teacher and I can't help him, because I was in school by about 7 o'clock in the morning and I wasn't home until 7 o'clock at night. And he was really struggling. And there's that and the pressure at school. And my wife kept saying, "You got to get out of that job before you have a heart attack." So somewhere along in that period, my brother-in-law came to me and said, hey Chaz, do you want to earn a bit of money in the summer holidays? I'm just looking for people to help me out. Now, my brother-in-law is Tom Hare. So if you've got any real interest in the world of willow, you'll have heard of Tom Hare, because he is one of the country's top willow artists. And he's been called out to China and America. He spends a lot of time over in Europe. He's got displays in the Oslo Botanical Garden. He was commissioned to do sculpture for the King and Queen of Norway's garden. He was on the television a couple of years ago with Kate Middleton, opening up a play area, I think it's Hampton Court, where he's got this huge, great dragon's nest that he made out of willow. So he's incredible. And he did a tree for the Chelsea Flower Show. I think it's 2010. And artists, sort of celebrities came on camera and in front of this tree, and they wrote their wishes to the future on these leaves and hung it on the tree. And some American geezer saw that and said, "Oh, that's what I need for the autumn display." But one's no good. I need 3 of them, and they've got to be at least 7 meters tall, because 5 meters won't cut it in the space I'm putting them in. So he tried to turn that round and get 3 of these trees redesigned, made up, all the steel work made in sections so it could be taken apart and put into container ships in Central America. So basically, for the first time ever, he got about 10 people to work with him. So they'd been working, I think, for 2 weeks when I hit summer holidays. So I just went in there, joined them, and worked for a couple of weeks. And at the end of the second day, he said, "Oh, Chaz, you know, these guys have done this a fortnight, and you're by the second day here, you're already up to speed with them. You're picking this up really well." And after that was over, he started giving me other little jobs. Would you like to do the Riverside Festival for me? Do some willow workshops there. And oh, there's this festival coming up, a 4-day festival in Devon. Would you like to go down and do the willow for me? Doing a bit of sculpture there with them. And he kind of showed me what to do, and I really loved it. From that first time when I worked with him, I was addicted to willow, because we're in this great big hangar. And you'd walk in first thing in the morning at 8 o'clock, and as the doors open and you walk in, the smell of the willow, it's just divine. And I from that time, I just love it. I'll get in my car after I've been doing some willow working somewhere the day after, and there's no willow in there, but I'm hit by that beautiful smell of willow, and it's some kind of addiction, I think. But I don't want to be cured from it, and I just love it. So I started, doing little bits and pieces, and basically, long story short, I went down to part-time at school. I went down to 3 days, and then I went down to 2 days, and then in 2014, at the end of the summer term, I left and became a full-time willow weaver. And for ages, that was just for me. That was just the teaching. I was a teacher that had moved from teaching national curriculum to teaching willow. So I just targeted going to schools, and I've taught kids how to make fish and leaves and wreaths and these little bits and pieces. And I really enjoyed it. And I loved the buzz you got from kids when they made something and they felt proud of it. And it was just such a lovely thing to do. But as time went on, I started to increase more. So especially early on, I'd help Tom out with sculptures. So when he was doing a big sculpture, he'd bring me in as a outworker and work with him. So I learned a lot working next to him. And then I taught myself. I went to Aldi and got a welder. So I taught myself how to stick bits of metal together with a welder. So I started making some of my own armatures. And I'll show you some of the pictures of those things later. So that kind of expanded. So then I started doing some sculptures and getting commissions for working in school with children. So I'd make this metal armature, and then I'd go in and I'd work with the children for a few days, weaving the sticks in for that. And then I think Tom took me on a I think it's probably my first year, a basket making course that he was running out with Greenwood Days. I don't know if some of you have heard of that, but that's a fantastic place. Peter Woods does brilliant courses, greenwood woodworking courses, all kinds of things out there. So I did this 2-day basket course with Tom, and found something else I love. So I really love baskets. So I do a lot of basket making now. And so that's all kind of progressed on slowly, so like bit by bit. And during that period, I began to shift from seeing myself as a teacher, and I began to see myself as being more of an artist. And it was something that really ignited in me the desire to make something beautiful, just to make it, just to do something. So I do a lot of commissions, and I do a lot of work where I'm asked to do something and I'm unpaid to do something. But what I'm beginning to find that is what I love most of all is where I have an idea in my head, I visualize something, and I just go out and make it because I want to make it, not because someone else is paying me to do so. And that's what I love, in a way, most of all. I wonder if at this point maybe I would show you some of the images of the things that I do. So it's sheep again on the metal armature. The little ladybird I actually did with nursery children. So I made the armature and went into the school in Leicester, and all day long, children, I think it was in twos, came to work with me, and they only put like 1 or 2 leaves sticks in, but they put in a couple of sticks. I directed them with each one, and then they went away again. And then I spent about 2 hours after they'd gone home finishing it off and getting it done. So there's the beef and crunch. The one in the middle was a really interesting project for me. It's a school in Lincolnshire, and they asked me to come in and do a sculpture. So I had all this talk with them, because a lot of schools will want to have something that's like a professional level sculpture, but they want the children to do it. And there's a bit of a conflict there. So this particular school said, you know, if children can do some things, that'd be great, but we'd like the children to come out and see you, talk to you, ask questions. And so basically they said, you do it. You come in as an artist in residence and do it. And we just want to come along and see you and chat and things like that. So that was a lovely project. So that's supposed to be Mr. Toad. They have there's a school that's linked with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and they've got an outdoor stage where they do a lot of performances, and the Shakespeare Company often visit them and do a performance on that stage. So that is Mr. Toad, because they were doing Wind in the Willows that year. There's the bat on the left, and an angel chair, as I've called it, sitting in front of Stoneleigh Abbey down on the bottom there. So there's some examples of some of the larger sculptural things that I do.
That's so beautiful. Let me just, since your more recent work is on Instagram, I'll just
yeah, that's the best place to go for.
Yeah. Just look up. Okay, here we go. So
on the left there in the middle is a kind of pretty well life-size Mary and Joseph that I've just done for the local C of E church. Obviously, I do a lot of adult workshops. So this month and last month, I had a whole load of Christmas workshops cancelled, where we do angels and these kind of spirals, reindeer, all kinds of things, wreaths.
Maybe stop share. Okay, great. Chad, are you going to do a little demo, or should I ask?
Okay, I can whip on with the demo. I've just got to go and get some willow out the freezer.
Okay. I'll just get everybody muted for now, so that shows us a speaker view, and then we can ask questions like 10 minutes.
Yeah, for years, I would just waste so much willow. So you'd go into school, you got to make sure that you're not going to run out in school. So I'd end up taking more in than I actually need. So I'd come home with like half a bundle, maybe more, of willow, and it depends on what type of willow you get, but it's often like 40 to 50 pound a bundle, especially when you take into account your VAT and your transport to get it shipped out to you. So it's an awful lot of waste. So if I've got a couple of days, I might be able to make something with it. But if it's hot weather, you know, it goes moldy within a few days. If it's or it will dry out, so you can't use it, and you can't soak it again and get top quality willow. The skin comes off. It just doesn't work. And then Tom came back couple of years ago from working in Norway, and they said, you know, Chaz, they freeze their willow out there. They keep it in the freezer. And I think it was last year, I did Charnwood International Scout Camp, and for that I thought, hold on, I'm going to need this whole load of willow. I'm working with, I know, hundreds every single day, all week. So I thought, well, if I got it soaked up, I can only get so much in my soaking tank. I'd have to do it in 2 batches, and by the time the second batch is done, the first batch would have gone moldy or dried out. So I bought a freezer, so I soaked it all up, stuck the first batch in the freezer, and then ever since then I've been using the freezer, and it's just been brilliant. So it saves the willow. It still slowly dries out in the freezer, but it just lasts so much longer. So normally to make a wreath core, I'd start with an 8-foot stick, but I haven't got any 8-foot stick with me. I've got some 6-foots here. So with an 8-foot stick, I'd have just one 8-foot stick would give me like a foot size wreath, which is the kind of perfect size to going on a door. So this is like to be a little bit smaller than that. But I'll take my first starting stick, and it's often good to help it bend. Just kind of like you prepare it. So a willow stick has what's called a back and the belly. So if you notice it's curving this way. If I try and make it curve the other way, it resists. So it has this natural way that it wants to bend. So I want to work with that. So one way of preparing it is to run your thumb down it like that. Just bring it down. You could do that by taking it across your knee, but you need to do that kind of preparing, so then it's just more readily bends without fighting you. So once you prepared it, you basically make a little knot and pull it in to get the right kind of size you want. As I said, if we had a bigger stick, we could have a nicer size, but this is about as big as we're going to get with that. Then you tuck in what's left, and you pull a little bit. If you pull it too much, it will kink, but put a little bit of tension on it to make sure it's fairly tight, and then it will grip itself well. Okay, so if that was a little bit longer, I could tuck him around again, but he's not going to go around. So I'm going to take the next one. Give him a little bit of a pair. All right, I want to treat this like a roundabout. I want every stick going in the same direction in the same way. So my butt end, my starting bit is going down. So this one's going to go down. So I'm going to put it in first opposite, but the roundabout's always going around the same way. So I'm going to take that now and bring him through. Are many of you doing the foliage part of the wreath making tomorrow with Alison? No? Yes? Some of you might be.
Well, whoever's doing it, do a thumbs up because they're on mute.
Yeah. I was looking for some nodding, but I got a few smiles. Didn't get much. We like smiles. Right, so the key thing is, you aren't going to be able to see this all that well, but that stick that I've just put in, it's followed the grooves of the sticks that are there before. So they're kind of like perfectly aligned. So when I put another one in, I want to put it in a different spot. Smooth that back a wee bit. So I'm going to put him over here. I'm going to make sure all the others are going down. So he's going to go down. And I put him in, I run him next to a groove. So as I go round, he's going to want to follow that groove all the way around and not step out of it. So I'm directing it into the groove of the stick that was there before. And as you do that, you get a really tight wreath. every so often you can look at it, and if it's not looking quite circular, you can put pressure on it while it's all moist like that to get it how you want it to be. But you keep building more and more up. So the other sticks, I'd start putting them in so that they're all spread out, all starting in different places, all following the groove round until you build that up and build that up. Now, I'll often just do it like that. And to finish it off, it's nice to have some different colors. So I might have a steamed dark chocolate color stick going round, and maybe white stick going round. So I have some different shades, different colors of sticks. So you get that sort of almost that striped effect going around, which is really beautiful. And some people, when they've got that built up like that, will do a reverse weave. I'm not sure how well it's going to show up here because I'm using the same type of willow, knocking things off in my workshop. So for this one, I'm going to go the opposite way. So it's starting to add a second layer. So this stick's crossing every other stick. So as a finish off, this kind of thing is often done. So especially with different color sticks. So these are actually going opposite. So they're crossing through all the others, but that gives nice little gaps and anchor points where you can put foliage in when you're wrapping it round and things like that. So a lot of the wreaths I do are just all following the flow. So I build them up quite thick, everything going the same way. But another method is to finish that off by doing another layer of reverse weave. But that is basically how you make a wreath. And if you use basket grade willow for that, then that'll last year and year. But if you've got some living willow growing in your garden, you need to go and harvest this year's growth that's only grown this year. Don't get any older than that, and that will make you some lovely big wreath cores. So
oh, that was so fantastic. Thank you. Is it cool?
Hey.
Yeah.
She said it's cool. Okay, great. Everybody, you can unmute yourself and ask some questions. We can have a little discussion.
Can I ask a question?
certainly can.
Yeah, well, two related questions on the process. You spoke a lot of having a steel frame and armature for those sculptures. Two questions. One was, do you always do that, and why? Is it to do with longevity of the sculpture? Or can you have one that's just totally willow without a steel? Is there a limitation on size? And the second point was, presumably when you've got a steel frame, you've got a lot of detailed planning. And I just wondered how detailed those things are planned on paper before you start building.
Okay, yeah, good
There's
question.
the process. I want to know about the process.
Yeah. Okay, so part of that is that me working with Tom, he always uses steel frame. So that was the model. So it seemed natural to me to start doing that. A lot of willow artists don't use any steel at all.
Okay.
And partly that is because they can't use it. They're not, they haven't learned how to, and to pay someone to make it is just too expensive. So a lot of them just work with willow. The thing about just willow is, if it's obviously willow will, a deer or whatever sitting out in the fields, it's going to soak up the rain, it's going to dry out, soak up the rain, it's going to the willow's going to start to sag, it's going to start to go rotten, and without a steel armature in the middle, the whatever you've got in there that's giving it the support, that's going to sag in the same way. So it's going to start over time losing its shape, and you probably can't refresh it. You have to scrap it and start again from scratch. Nice thing about a steel armature is that when you've done it, when you've got it, then you've got your permanent shape, so that that maybe last 20-30 years. So every time the willow's had enough, you can just strip it off and reweave it, and you've got it there again. So it will often take more time to make the metal armature than it will do to weave the willow. So the Mary and Joseph that you just saw, Mary, she was really awkward because they wanted her sitting down. I thought, well, to make any kind of chair or block as part of it, that's just when the willow goes down, it's just going to be this big lump. So I did a kneeling, and it took 21 hours to get the steel work for Mary done and finished before I started weaving. And then I think she took, was it 12 and a half hours to weave on the willow. Whereas Joseph, nice, straightforward, basically a cone shape. I think he took 10 hours to do 10 and a half hours to do the steel work, and about the same amount of time. I think it was 10 hours to put the willow in and weave him up. So
Hi there.
did I answer both parts there? I'm not sure if I did.
I was just going to comment a joke, really, but women are always complicated. Meanwhile, gosh, it was a little while back now, because in a past life almost, I was working on the Foundry Woods project. It's a little community woods that's in Leamington. I don't know if you've heard of that. And they've got like a fencing thing that had been installed ages ago, a bit unkept. And their mental health group would come in and they sort of keep the area. We'd work with them. And I was just wondering, because I was told, but we're all amateurs, that when you're working, when you're working with live willow and you bend it, about putting a little cut in as you bend it in. Is that true? Because I didn't like the idea of cutting into a living plant.
Right.
Because I am planning to do something in the garden at some point, and I wouldn't want to. I'd like to know actually while you're here, is that the right thing to do when you're bending things into the fencing?
So that's like a hedge laying thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So they'll hack halfway through the branch often before they lay it down and position it and stake it. So it looks so brutal.
Help the bend, like just they're saying find the notch, then put a little slice at an angle, and then bend it. It just felt.
Well,
like
I don't know. That's not something I've ever done.
Right, yeah.
Any time you open up the bark or open it up like that, you're
disease or
inviting disease to get in it. So
I thought so. I just thought I'd check.
So that's nothing. I wouldn't criticize anybody else's advice, and probably there's a world out there where that is the perfect thing that you do. But with working with willow, I wouldn't have thought there's any kind of need for that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I remember that. Thank you.
Chas, could I ask you, are you still visiting schools? Because I know somebody that's trying to set up a forest school at a local school around here and has been asking about the willow in our garden. And obviously I'm happy for them to have some of it. But do you still visit schools to help them out?
I would do. Yes. Yeah. So I've got a school that's booked me in for putting in a living willow dome in February.
Right.
Yeah. So
okay.
I'd still do it. But
thank you. So I can pass your contact on. Is that all right?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
And if anyone is particularly interested in the living willow, I'm about to launch on making a Udemy course on living willow, how to install it, maintain it, and all that kind of thing. So I was hoping that would be out ready for the living willow season after Christmas by the end of January, but I don't know. It just takes so long to do in these things. But
yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
You have a
Can you
few
say
more
a little
minutes.
bit more about the Saints? Because I live in Burnhastings near Nuneaton, and I never heard of it.
Sorry, about the what? Sorry?
The Saints.
Oh, Saints in Nuneaton.
Yeah, sure. I live nearby, but I don't know anything about it.
Okay, right. Yeah. So I'll try and keep it a short story. Basically, Saints was a nightclub called Saints. And I think they had No More Saints or something, or Not Saints No More, something like that up on the wall in there. And then I don't know whether they went bust or whatever, but the building was being derelict. It's the old Conservative Club building that was built in 1898, the plans. And basically the story behind it is the Bishop of Coventry was looking at the stats with one of his officers, and saying we got to do something for Nuneaton, because it's, you know, for homelessness and unemployment, teenage pregnancy, all the indicators, drug use and all that kind of thing. Nuneaton was in a poor way. And she basically said, oh, let's set up a community cafe, and we'll support local businesses setting up. We'll have training. We'll do stuff with youth. We'll do all this kind of stuff there. So this vision started forming, and basically they have transferred. They've got some funding, some grants, and they've transferred the downstairs of that building into this beautiful, lovely atmosphere cafe, where, you know, just people go in and get drinks and things. But it's also got a section for a learning zone, and a number of community things are using it. I do my courses in there. I've got a stall there. There's other craft stalls that are in the building. They're renovating upstairs. That's
a good location for an open studios.
Yeah, so it's quite incredible. The council's given them money to have a farmers market. So the idea is that people that they give out vouchers to can go into a fairly high, sort of prestigious atmosphere to go and cash their vouchers in to get food in a way that's honourable, and then members of the public can just go in and buy this veg as well. So I've just had my biggest basket commission, make 5 big baskets, go there. And I'm in the middle of working on the sign to put up in there. But this the way that place is reaching into the community and helping people and connecting is quite amazing.
That's great. Yeah.
So it's a really lovely project to be part of.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome. You need to go and have a coffee there.
Oh, definitely.
When it opens.
When it opens.
We're all in that state.
That's all really interesting, and it's probably fired me up to thinking I need to try again, because I did plant a willow arch, but because I was green, so to speak, I didn't know what I was doing. I stuck it underneath where a lalandi was, and of course the lalandi would take all the moisture and the nutrients, and it started to go, but then it died, and it was a lot of work, and so I didn't try again, but I ought to try again in the right place.
Location is so important, and the big killer is underneath, where there's established root systems that rob it of the moisture.
Yeah, well, it's where aesthetically it would have looked lovely, but it wouldn't have done. It was no good for the plant. No. So you learn, don't you, by your mistakes.
Do they take a lot of maintenance, the living ones?
It's really important that it has it, but it doesn't need very much. So like an afternoon a year. So there's 2 things you need to, obviously you need to trim back some stuff that just doesn't work with it. So if you've got a tunnel running this way and your main afternoon sun's over here, those sticks on this side are going to bend over. Some of them you'll be able to roll them back in with the rest of the willow, but a lot of them will be too much of an angle. So you're just going to have to cut them off. So you have to cut stuff off. And the more you cut off, of course, the more it grows. But if you don't wrap it in, it will eventually lose its shape, because its blueprint is to be a tree.
Yeah, true.
So and what happens is when you make an archway, so you have sticks coming up on both sides that just wrap around each other, sort of in the same way that in this you got this wrapped around, so they're going over and wrapping around each other. When that stick starts to drop down, the plant says, hold on, that's not working for me, and it basically dies off. So if you don't put fresh stuff in your arches every year, eventually those will die off and they'll stop doing anything. And then because they're going back to, we want to be a straight tree, so you put fresh stuff in every year to keep keep that going.
Oh, right.
But one of the biggest problems with them is where in schools are notorious for this, they neglect them. They have this lovely idea, oh, we'll have this lovely tunnel, and they put it in, and 5 years later you got this avenue of trees, and they suddenly wake up, oh dear, we need to get this done again. So they'll call somebody like me to, and there's nothing you can do really probably apart from hack them all up to the height they want and then start folding them in. But the problem is then, as it grows up, the root system mirrors it. So the root system's gone out way all over the place, and then you cut it back. You've got this lightweight motorbike being driven by this Ferrari engine under the ground. So you're really fighting to keep it under control then. So it's if you keep it under control and keep it trimmed, then the root system will remain contained, and you've got to but let it run away, and then you're spending the rest of the time chasing it.
How did that
the moral
one
is
that
then
you
to
did
do your research
end up?
first before you start. Yeah.
That's a very good idea.
The cross one, how did that end up when it started growing?
It looked really nice. I haven't got many pictures of it, but it was a lot of red Flanders, which is a slightly slower growing willow than the living willow you normally use. So it was covered in lots of little leaves. It almost looked like ivy in some ways, lots of little leaves off it, and a few little branches coming off when I saw it. But I didn't get to see it again, so I don't know how well that one did.
You have to write that into your contract. I'll come back and photograph it.
Yes, yeah. I think though the school is closed now. So and an email from the head a while back. So
when you do a tunnel, how far into the ground do you push the willow?
Right. So it needs to go between at least 6 inches, maybe more. So if you've got nice soft ground, I've got a tool. I've made a metal tool which is basically looks like a pogo stick that I use to go in, make a hole, and put it in. I started just with a lump hammer and a pin, and would hammer that in for each stick. But now I've got this tool here that I push in like a fork almost to make the hole, and it's important that it goes deep enough. Yeah.
Do you collect your own willow, or do you just get it all from a supplier?
So I've done a few projects where I've been pulled in to put a dome in or something after I've been in to go and tidy up a school. So I've been able to use some material that I've harvested in other places, but most of the time I just get it straight from the supplier, because that's that is just, it's perfectly straight, beautiful, smooth sticks. They're so easy to work with. If you've got sticks that have from a willow tree and just harvest them off, you often find there's like little branches coming off, and if you try and bend something over, like to make the dome of the top of a dome, and it's got a branch coming off, at that point it's likely to kind of, instead of being a nice straight curve, you have this curve, and then it'll be slight, it'll kink a bit, because the extra material in it just throws it off. It won't make this beautiful straight curve for you. So you don't get that.
I went to a place in the Somerset where they prepared the willows, and they had weavers there making coffins out of it.
Right. Was that Musgrove? Was that Musgrove willows? Coates willows?
I can't remember the name of it, but they had to. They'd lost their skills locally and had to bring in Eastern Europeans to come and do it.
Yeah.
Big thank you, Chaz. You want to say thank you?
Here's a slideshow of photos of some of the items that I've made. This is my first sculptural item, angel, that was in the courtyard of the school that I left. It took me about a year to do this, just in odd times. It was a gift for the school. This second photo is Tom's armature. I think it was down at Gatton Park. I went down and did some workshops with some children, and at the same time taught some of their volunteers how to weave up this lovely pear sculpture. These crosses are typical type of cross that I make when I go into school, especially at C of E schools, and I'll often work with the children to do the weave before the cross is left behind and put in place. Other items that I make with the children at schools are things like hearts and fishes. I'm afraid that photo's lost his tail a bit there, but those are really good things for the children to be able to do and have a good level of success in. Here's a sculpture from a Catalyst Festival that was held at Stoneleigh Park. I call this an angel chair. So it's got like a couple of angel wings encompassing a metal chair that I made and weaved up willow into. Okay, this sphere was for a school. It was part of a trail that linked in with books. So the link here is supposed to be James and the Giant Peach. This sculpture can be found in the Adventure Playground area of Christchurch Tramway Museum. For a few years I went there during their Wood Week, working 3 days, working with members of the public, making fish and leaves and that kind of thing. And it was so popular they asked me to extend that and to work 5 days a week. And I thought, well, if I'm going there for 5 days a week, what might be a really good idea is to do some sculpture. The following year I did a bat as the sculpture, and then in the third year, last year, we weaved up this bee, but of course there hasn't been that kind of thing this year. A different type of sculpture I did earlier in 2020 was at a public area in Wolvie. These are a couple of cricketers, and rather than being weaved round a metal armature like a skeleton, this just had some simple basic metal at the core of these characters, and then the willow was weaved round to make up the flesh and the arms. This is an example of a kind of pod that can go in the school. This one again is a metal armature holding all that in place, so when the willow has had enough, it can be easily replaced. There's two different types of tree sculpture that I've done in schools. Again, the armature is done first and then taken into school and then work with the pupils to weave it up. So one is 3D and was outside the front of the school, and the other, the 2D one, was placed on the wall of their reception area. These are typical, quite easy makes to do in school. The typical leaves, fish, swords, the small Christmas trees at Christmas, little wreaths. The picture in the middle with the 6 different items is what I make with children, 6 different classes at Easter, and each one of those different items helps tell the Christmas story. The large caterpillar at the top there, I think is done with a nursery, where the children just worked at trying to put sticks into round segments which all were put together to make that particular sculpture. These are some items from some of my adult classes that I do. As you see, some of them are linked in with Christmas. Others are not. You have the sunflower and the tension trays down there. Of course, there's a lot of other things that are make in these adult classes, such as obelisks and things like that, but this is just a small sample. This is the example of the last sculpture that I've just done in school, so just a few weeks ago. Very similar to some of the sculptures you saw earlier on. Again, I took the armature into school and the children worked with me for the day. to get these all done and finished. So I thought it'd be useful for you to have a little look at the armatures that I start with. So this is for the Mary and Joseph sculpture. So these are the armatures that I created, and then once that was all done, then this is what became those figures once all that willow had been put on. I love in the springtime, or just before the spring hits, doing some living willow. The best month for that is February, getting that willow in the ground. You can see examples of some living willow there that's been established for a couple of years. The tunnel on the left, that is how it looked in its first year, and then right in the middle there, that's what you get when they're first installed without a leaf on them before they start to grow. So just coming up to living willow season now soon. And then lastly, here's an example of some of the basketry that I do. I think all those baskets in that image have been made this year. There's quite a few more than that I've done. But that is just a wider sample range of the kinds of things that I do. I hope you found that at least slightly interesting and informative. If you want me to do any commissions for you or anything like that, then please get in touch.